All right, everybody, I think we're going to get started now. My name is Rich Foley. I'm the Vice President of Marketing for Airspace Link. You'll learn a lot more about Airspace Link in the course of this conversation. I just want to introduce some of the panelists that you'll be hearing from today, and then we'll jump into our first questions. This is a 1 hour webcast. We'll leave some room at the end for questions and answers and look forward to hearing any questions you might have. I should also point out that after this, we plan to send out more information for you all to digest, a 120-day action plan, and you'll have connections to us afterwards if you have additional questions for any of our panelists. As I mentioned, I'm Rich Foley. I'm Vice President of Marketing. The first panelist today is Michael Helander. Michael is the co-founder, president, and CEO of Airspace Link. Airspace Link is a leading innovator in the drone airspace management technology space. We have something called a drone operations management system here that serves cities, government agencies, and commercial organizations. And we deliver real-time traffic coordination, automated deconfliction, and comprehensive security monitoring to help cities coordinate multiple drone operations simultaneously while maintaining safety, obviously. Michael's been doing this for quite some time and has been at the forefront of solutions for safe urban drone integration for many years. We also have George Burciaga on the call with us. Hi, George. George is the managing partner at the U.S. Roundtable, where he advises mayors across the country on technology initiatives, and he leads Elevate Cities to deploy smart city solutions across the country. You've generated, George, more than $2.2 billion in value for U.S. cities through efficiency and sustainability improvements. I know from experience that many mayors lean hard on you, and you have a who's who of former mayors and of major U.S. cities as part of your team, along with many major corporate technology leaders. So welcome, George. We also have Francis Kelly today. Francis is the manager of global partner programs at Esri. Esri, obviously a leading geospatial organization, and Francis there leads state, local government partnering initiatives, and you spent 8 years there building strategic partnerships in the geospatial technology sector. You have experience in geospatial technology solutions and software lifecycle management, and you were a former Esri partner yourself, and you've been working with Airspace Link for many years, most importantly, and that's why you're here today. You understand the bridge between our customer base in cities and the work they do with Esri as well, which is a really important connection we'll make here today. And our last panelist today is Matt Rybar. Matt, how you doing? You're the president and founder of the Michigan Drone Association. That's Michigan's largest drone trade group with more than 750 members, 130 organizations spanning public safety, agriculture, energy, education, and industry. And your own background, Matt, is in law enforcement, so you bring all that expertise and how to bring real-world DFR programs to cities, and also thinking about how to integrate public safety drone use into larger cities' drone technologies. So welcome, Matt. As I mentioned, we'll have time afterwards. If you do have questions, though, throughout, please feel free to drop them in the channel. There's a chat channel here in this webinar, and we will have people here who will flag those. I'll be watching them myself, and then we'll jump in and get started. So let me just start, Michael, my first question. There's been an enormous amount of activity with drone regulations across the United States. This is something that our industry has been waiting for some time. There's been some confusion and some pauses and wait and sees, and now we're seeing a cascading element of drone regulations, which are going to set up new funding opportunities in 2025 for cities, and 2026 for cities and other large federal organizations. The June executive order started everything off from this administration, but now we're seeing new rules from the Department of Transportation, and there's going to be somewhere in the neighborhood of 13 to 20 billion in federal funding to support this. And for a mayor or city manager who's joining this, or for that matter, anyone who's joining this webinar, what's the single most important thing they need to understand about these changes that are coming their way, how to create both opportunities and new obligations as well at the municipal level?
Yeah, I would, you talked about cascading. This is a waterfall effect that I think the drone industry has been waiting for 3 or 4 years to still put in at least a process, make things clear. Maybe I hit just a few of those cascading effects and what's happening. Like you said, on June 6th, there's 2 executive orders: Unleash American Drone Dominance, and the second one was Restoring American Airspace Sovereignty. And what that means is innovate, push down rules to help allow drones to fly beyond visual line of sight with actual rulemaking versus waivers, but also secure airspace, being able to understand if we're going to fly drones in the advanced way, we also need ways to understand who's flying there. Second was the July 4th bill with the funding. There is funding in there, and there's actually a line item for $500 million for state and local governments to apply for grants to buy systems to help support that safe integration of drones within their communities. We may talk on that some more. Then there's unleashing U.S. Military drone dominance. So it's a combination of commercial operations, security, and now Department of Defense or Department of War now. And now since then, I'd say in July, there was states starting to create advanced air mobility drone initiatives. So we're starting to see the states kick in and positioning for potentially those budgets. And then August 15th with Sean Duffy really put out the most advanced drone BVLOS rulemaking out for public comment. It's called NPRM. That's out till October 5th or 6th. That sets out 731 pages of pretty dense rulemaking to allow drones to start flying advanced operations at the end of potentially in the beginning or middle of next year.
Really quick, Michael, Sean Duffy being the Secretary of the U.S. Department of Transportation, for anyone who may not know who Sean Duffy is.
You got it. Thank you. Yes. So that's a big announcement. So this is a cascading process, and those are kicking on more and more processes. And funding is in what's it going to look like, and what are the specs going to be, are all still being figured out. And that's why we're talking today, is to get a little bit of the noise out and just have a better understanding what's coming with what we can see, and how you get your communities prepared for your own drone programs, and also positioning for a lot of this funding as cities will be able to apply for some of these grants.
Yeah, can you specifically mention, Michael, just what BVLOS means to the drone industry and delivery, and why these rules that we've all been waiting for, why the fact that they're happening now is so important to the advancement for cities?
Yes, at Airspace Link, we support recreational pilots. We Part 107 commercial pilots, and they're all flying within a rule set, which is VLOS, visual line of sight. I fly a drone, but you can't remotely fly. You cannot fly one pilot to many drones or allow a drone to fly out 10 miles. We've all seen the package delivery. There are exemptions now. Airspace Link is supporting multiple companies and governments, drones as a first responder, package delivery to fly miles out, but they're with waivers. They're with exemptions, so outside the rule sets. Well, we're getting a lot of those waivers now, and it's getting hard to understand who is following the rules, who isn't. And BVLOS rulemaking is putting out a set of rules, like here are the rules, regulations, and here's what you need to follow to get approved to fly within the national airspace, and putting a rule set that we can truly scale as an industry, and communities start to engage and benefit from, swift water rescue, blood delivery, medical delivery, whatever, drones as a first responder, whatever that might be, putting that process in place to support that.
That's awesome. So yeah, one of the things too is that most of the cities and others that we're talking to do, in many cases, are already flying drones. It just may not be in a coordinated fashion. And so thinking about some of the leaders in that space, say we'll get to some of this soon with talking with Matt and others, but understanding that some cities are experimenting or working with drone programs, but aren't necessarily thinking about what these rule changes might mean to them. So they're sort of happening to them. And for the very first time, you're seeing mayors, city managers, other department heads in cities having to sort of pay attention to what these rules might mean and how it may change the way they do their jobs every day. And that's the discovery that's just happening at the city level.
Yeah, I mean, this is very new. And the first thing that comes up is privacy. How is our police department using drones? We're talking to police department, it's scary, but then they come back and they get metrics like they saved 150 lives last year because of their drone program, and that extends that capability. So our job here is to help get the communities up to speed, start getting engaged, so that they don't start at a starting stop or a standing start 6 months from now, and just saying, okay, how do we get started when there's funding available, and just really starting to get a community plan in place to figure out how to get their house in order, their own drones. What are we flying? How are we flying? And what's our path forward in the future?
Yeah, I'm going to throw to George in a sec because I think this is where it's a natural segue into what cities are thinking. But before that, Michael, just for the very first time, because the airspace, meaning anything above a blade of grass, has been always a federal focus. It's never been something that cities have necessarily had to think of outside of zoning and thinking of things like that. Can you talk just a little bit before we start bringing George into this conversation about what cities are now going to be responsible for or have to think about in this new world that they've never had to think about before?
Yeah, so we're going to see, and we're seeing it right now, multi-jurisdictional partnerships, agency jurisdictional, and we're doing it in multiple locations where we're connecting DHS, Department of Homeland Security, with TSA, with public safety, and starting to give that cross-jurisdictional understanding of who's flying where within a large event. One of the big drivers right now that we're seeing is FIFA cities. That's a big one. Those 11 cities right now are being positioned as how are we going to operate with so many different agencies within your city, also understand securing that airspace. There's one thing to fly the drones, but what about drones that are coming into our airspace and how are we going to handle those? So a lot of that's being figured out, and then that drops what I call into the NFL cities, and then just our critical infrastructure, and then into our communities. There's going to be funding for potential tools for supporting. Like I'm in Lansing right now, the city's capital, and that's what I'm here. They're asking, what do we do next year? How do we handle? Is this considered critical infrastructure? And again, there's some things being figured out, but at least we're giving them tools to make sure that they're getting their house in order. It's hard to figure out bad actors if they're your own drones. It's police drones. It's the sheriff's drones. It's the state police drones, or is it a residence drones? And just clearing and putting the tools in place to better understand is what they're going to need.
Yeah, well, George, you're talking to mayors every day. When we talk about FIFA, we're talking about FIFA World Cup cities for 2026. There's 11 U.S. cities and many others if you take into consideration Mexico and Canada. But in the U.S., there's 11 cities. And you're talking to many of those mayors and many other mayors for that matter. How ready are they for what's going to happen to their cities with drones? How eager are they? And what kind of questions are they asking in your conversations with U.S. mayors?
Yeah, first let me start by saying, thank you to the Airspace Link team for putting this incredible sort of panel together, right? We have these extraordinary leaders. Michael, thank you for leading the team here. Rich, thank you for moderating, and of course, the other guest panelists. This conversation is required. Why? Because you just asked a question. How many sort of mayors are already thinking about how drones fly? The truth is, they may not completely be thinking about the drone specifically, but they are definitely thinking about keeping people safe. They are definitely thinking about the people experience. They are definitely thinking about people around transportation and mobility, right? So the idea is, how do we take this incredible opportunity? Michael just mentioned that there's $500 million of revenue from the federal government that's waiting to be deployed. There's companies that are on this panel and others watching that are participating in the growth of this type of sort of air infrastructure, right? Because that's really what's happening. It's creating this new opportunity for us to support a number of different services. So I'm going to come back a bit and say, a lot of mayors are hoping that there's an easy way to engage drones. They don't always have the answer on how to sort of start that process because it's fairly new, but they all recognize, all of the cities we work with. In fact, I was on with the city of Chicago earlier today and the city of Los Angeles. We've talked as a group with Airspace Link to Atlanta, to Los Angeles, to Chicago, to a number of other cities who have all sort of they're running to the idea of how do I get started? The question is how, right? So this conversation is required because it's going to open up that discussion. And Michael just kind of pointed at some of the areas of potential revenue and opportunity. I think that needs to be a little bit easier for them to understand. But I can tell you right now that the topic and the theme around mayors and engaging, they're all aware. The fact that there's revenue coming in, I think there's some key themes that we're focusing on from a municipal, local level. Federal alignment, which is probably more the funding and sort of the delivery. Michael mentioned some of those pieces, which it's critical because it's what's driving this. Mayoral leadership is probably the second point. Mayoral leadership is going to drive the champion thinking of how this will get started and how we should be using it. The use cases start to drive those next probably steps as well. Public safety, economic growth, equity and access. We start to look at how it operates across departments and other services. So all those things become really important. But I think the key is that everyone is recognized that this opportunity, the offering itself, the solution, taking more of a solution first, people first position with drones, the platform itself, the leadership you guys have taken to really drive this forward. Cities are recognizing that there's another way, a new way to create change and transformation around some critical areas. Public safety, right? New revenue, the delivery of services, emergency management. And there's a number of use cases that we could point at, and the key is that it's recognized now. And I think timing is everything. And I think we're at the right place at the right time to really create the change that, you're discussing, you've mentioned, and the folks will talk about today.
Yeah.
Yeah, George, I'll jump in too, Rich. You're okay with that? George, in this panel, the reason we have this panel because we're seeing patterns. There's one thing to have a mayor, they're very high level. How does it create jobs? How does it benefit my community? How does it make us innovative? And then we're also dealing with a DFR, drones as a first responder. We're out there saving lives and, don't get in my way and just let me operate and do that. And it's awesome because just the stories there is amazing. But then you also have cybersecurity and data management, which we have Esri on here is this authoritative data sets that are being used to support it. So when we're in these cities, you have this top level, you have the IT departments, you have drones as a first responder, and then you have other departments like how do we use drones for facade inspections, water departments, engineering, and then how do they all plug in and play, and then you have the media group and what's a drone pilot license? We got a bunch of drones. Who has them? And you just really these drone programs are just exploding. Cities are becoming one of the fastest growing segments in drones, and I'd say from that Rybar standpoint.
Michael, to your point, if you ask a mayor, and I can say this openly because of the dialogue we have with over 100 plus mayors across the country on a regular basis, they'll tell you, you want to sell me something, resolve something first. Mm-hmm. And that's what you're doing. You just named a bunch of things that you're actually fixing. The idea is, you want to see change, critical change, but you also want to be able to scale and replicate it.
Yeah.
And the profitability around that is the offset of cost, the new services, the public safety, all these other things that start to happen. And that's the unique part about this. If I can do it faster, safer, more efficiently, and if I can apply new technologies, we all just actually, your team and I, we connected with Cisco. And they were like, yes, this is kind of the direction we're thinking, right? You have infrastructure folks and security folks who are globally recognizing this. You have folks on this panel right now that do the same thing and recognize the importance of it. And NVIDIA, we were on with them as well, right? Again, they recognize the opportunity here from an AI position. So I'm completely in agreement with you that the idea of resolving these critical issues is the first step to creating change, and mayors recognizing it, and they do. That they absolutely do.
Yeah, George, you mentioned something really important. You talk about first step. And, Francis, I want to talk to you about that too, because you've been working with us for a long time and have seen some of these cities come in and they started with nothing. They didn't really know what they were doing, and they've taken a stepped approach. We talked about Ontario, California, and other cities that came on with us long ago, literally with nothing, but now they have very advanced programs because they attack this incrementally. And you were one of the first people to see that and worked with us up close to see like not everything needs to happen at one time. This is going to move quickly once we have these new beyond visual line of sight rules come in, and we'll talk about that. But maybe Francis, you can speak to that sort of stepped approach to kind of moving things along with some of the cities that you and I both know.
Yeah, absolutely. And I go all the way back to 2019, right? Pre-COVID, when we met the city of Ontario at the National League of Cities, and they were really coming to this awareness and this awakening that they were in fact responsible for the drones that were already flying in their community. So they came to Airspace Link and said, "Hey, who's actually responsible?" And their first iteration, if you will, in drone management was really building a community that could have delivery. And as they went year over year, they realized with their drone management program, they could say, okay, we could do delivery, but now we need drones as a first responder. So actually seeing the growth and really the iterative process that a city like Ontario, California went through to first define themselves as, hey, we're going to be drone ready. We're going to be dropping off medical equipment to our community or even dropping off Amazon packages. They kind of started at that delivery. And then as they went through, they were able to leverage that not only their system of record in ArcGIS, but really all the capabilities in Airspace, Link, and AirHub to really grow their capability to where they are today, which is using drones as a first responder. So as George was talking about some of the statewide initiatives, I was reminded about a lot of the things that we've seen over the past 5 or 6 years with Airspace Link, we've proven out, be they locally there in Michigan or statewide initiatives or the things we see over in California. So really, while the federal government may continue to be waterfall, we continue to be agile in our approach and iterative in our delivery of that, of really those capabilities to the community at the right time, at the right reason, for the right program. So it's been really exciting to kind of watch it all grow and know that there's a place and space. If your vision is autonomy, you actually have to start at the beginning steps, and that's defining your really system of record, your system of engagement to have that system of action.
That's awesome. I want to talk a little bit about that drones as a first responder and also just acknowledge that a lot of the questions that are coming in are technically oriented, and we do want to talk about that. We're sort of setting up to get to that point. Everything, I saw a question come in on the UTM system to deconflict commercial delivery versus DFR, et cetera. I'll raise my hand and say that we can answer that problem for you pretty well at Airspace Link, but we'll get into that in just a minute. I do want to just bring up the fact that in most cities, and Matt, this is going to be how I throw over to you, most cities that we talk to, the drone program, as it were, is usually the police or the fire department using drones as a first responder tool. And also innovating and thinking of the value of that technology, often driving within a city the use of drones. So when we talk to a city, oftentimes the first person we're introduced to is somebody on the police force who's either a drone pilot or managing a drone program, which is fantastic. And they're operating a really cool system. They want to continue to operate that system without being slowed down because they're doing some really innovative things to save lives. But they're also working on their own oftentimes. And even then when we talk to a CIO or a CSIO or a CTO, they're like, yeah, that's a police and fire thing. Can you talk a little bit about the innovation you're seeing on the public safety side and sort of driving drone use in cities, but also the need for police and fire to sort of tap into larger city systems so that they're all operating in a common platform?
Yeah, absolutely. The last 10 years of the drone industry, it's been amazing to watch public safety really grab the leadership in a lot of these places and lead the charge. And a lot of that is because there's a tangible life safety benefit right away to first responders. And first responders have always been in the capacity of the ability to rip down regulatory barriers because of that life safety aspect of the work that we do on a daily basis. And so it's wonderful to see the trailblazers that these programs have been and really how they've led from the front in terms of from a transparency standpoint, from a public relations aspect there. These programs are holistic in making sure that stakeholders and community members are knowing how the technology is getting used, knowing how each and every day it's saving lives and really leaning into that as the programs have scaled over the last, like I said, 10 years now in the industry. But like you mentioned, Rich, as you start to expand to BVLOS at scale, that coordination with other stakeholders becomes imperative for our programs to continue to succeed and grow in the way that they have to date. First responders have been been in the waiver state of these BVLOS programs though for a number of years as well. And those program cycles to get those waivers and approvals can take 12 to 18 months at times for some. Thankfully, the FAA has worked to scale that. It's now a little bit quicker than it has been traditionally. But this next wave of regulatory rulemaking really is going to help enable that even more. I will say, George, you mentioned about equitable access to the airspace, and that's going to be very important in this next phase as well. And if we don't have that system integration, leaning on other departments and organizations that are helping solve this problem, that equitable access to the airspace gets very tough. Always, just like a first responder driving a patrol car or a fire truck down the roadway, turns on their overhead lights to get to an emergency in an expedited fashion. That's very easy in the roadway to kind of wrap our minds around that. But when we go to the air to provide that same type of equitable access, that's where system integrations and work with other aspects, other other partners in the space in the city municipality, whether it be IT or city planning, and other groups that want access to that airspace is going to become even more important and more imperative at that point. So as us as first responders coming from these long-standing drone programs, I think really I would discharge that you lean into your city IT that's working on this integration together. You lean into your other departments. And to the other departments, I just suggest you lean into your first responders who have spent so much time building these robust programs. Because when we look at this as a team approach and bringing in the private sector as well, that's what's going to get us to the finish line altogether.
Yeah.
If I could,
Oh, go
Can I
ahead.
jump in there a little bit, Matt?
Absolutely, go.
That was awesome. And what we're seeing is we're like public safety, keep going. Use drones, and I'll give a good example of a city that I think I mentioned earlier. Saved 150 lives last year. That absolutely keep doing what you're doing. But they said now we're going to invest in the IT infrastructure. Give us a year. Keep doing what you're doing. We're going to put in this large IT infrastructure, drone detection, radar, communication networks, all different, 4 different drone platforms, and then we'll put you onto the new platform that will allow you to, have 120 drones versus the tactical ones, and then really allow you to scale. And that is an example where they're trailblazing. Don't slow them down. Let's go put it in a more robust system and then put them onto that system to then. And here's what's interesting is happening. They're doing it with the mindset of, hey, if that drone is not doing a drone as first responder, can it run out and do a facade inspection? Can it go out and do shark detection? Can we have it do security sweeps around our critical infrastructure? Can that same infrastructure be leveraged by another drone operator that's commercial that needs access to whether it be C2 or radar or whatever it might be? So that's where we're seeing this, Matt, is like public safety, just keep pushing it. And then hopefully funding, not so it's not all on public safety, can start to be seen as, well, this is economic development, or this is helping support our GIS and IT department. That is where I'm seeing that, Matt, what you just said there is getting support from other groups.
Michael, if I could just support your statement and Matt's as well. We've conducted a series of conversations with mayors across the country around this topic and the related sort of categories that intersect public safety, these emergency services and new city services and new revenue, because there'll be new revenue that will be generated from, as you mentioned, that, we're recognizing, and I think the statement that I delivered to them in our last statement is that, drones are no longer just about flight. They're about how cities will see, how they'll respond, how they'll serve. And that is just the natural progression of what's happening. It's a fact. There's no way around it. The second piece is the sky, and this kind of supports Matt's statement. The sky has become, it's not becoming, it has become the next public right of way. And the fact is that it will definitely help us build a safer and smarter and more connected city in a different place, a place that we haven't actually leaned completely into, but it's there. And we're already seeing it happen. So we're in a place of this transformation where new services are developing and new to the extent that they haven't been done here. We've been doing them here and we've run out of space. People say, traffic's really bad, we should build a new lane. Well, you might need to find a new way to get there. You might need to find a new way to get you to that place to avoid the congestion on that express lane, on that expressway. So the idea is this creates the opportunity for us to think bigger in a place that is actually active, and folks on this call, on this Zoom, on this panel discussion are supporting how that will happen. So I couldn't agree more.
Yeah. And, all of you are sort of talking about the many things that need to happen. And a lot of times, and Matt, this one, I think I'll ping back to you. A lot of times people will think about drones as like individual elements. You've got the drones you fly, you've got a crew flying, you've got public safety, you've got drone detection and counter UAS. There's one of the biggest things that are attracting some of the mayors into our conversation or city leaders into our conversations about what can airspace do to help me is the fact that there are drones flying over stadiums, concert locations, water, critical infrastructure, etc. And they don't know what those drones are, if they're good or bad drones. So in addition to managing your own drones, there's also a need on the public safety side to understand what drones are above your citizens' heads and if they're safe and flying legally. And maybe, Matt, you can talk a little bit about the combination. Our system is built, and I'll turn it over to Michael after that, because our system is built obviously to integrate both of that, including, as Michael mentioned earlier, radar and sensor technologies. But Matt, if you could talk about sort of the growth of unauthorized or concerning drones, or just not knowing what's in there, and half the time they are authorized, and people just don't know what they are.
Well, Rich, you'll have to cut me off if I go on too long in this one, because this is a hot topic that comes up in just about every conversation, and something we're working on the association side with the Michigan Counter UAS Task Force to bring together these partners into one conversation to help solve it together, because we know that the amount of technology that's out there across our state from a drone detection side is still needs to grow, and we need to find ways to share infrastructure together and grow that infrastructure together for access. It's very important, though, that we know as public safety folks, if that drone is potentially a positive drone that is lawfully able to be in a location, or might be out there looking to conduct nefarious activity. And as these volume emissions roll up in these areas, it becomes a lot tougher to determine, is that a good, is that a friend, or is that a potential foe? And so some of these principles that you all are working on at Airspace Link to bring all of that data in together to identify those different aircraft as good or bad really will help us as public safety respond, find those pilots, make sure that that activity is not being conducted in a nefarious light. It's common knowledge, though, that right now we have flight restrictions in different areas across the state, and there's a lot of high volume of violations that still occur in those areas. And so the more we can do as a collective group across the state and across the nation to continue to bring this technology to light, to enable public safety to respond to those pilots, to educate when needed, as well as take enforcement on nefarious activity, it's going to be a take a village type of approach to make sure that everyone's working together to get to that finish line. But on the system
Matt,
side, or go ahead.
Matt, it's interesting when you're speaking. I was asking myself, is it bad actors or is it poor communication, right? Because some of the things that we saw over the last 6 months came out to, all the episode that we had in New Jersey was really about a lot of the communication and a lot about knowledge of the airspace, and really saying, do we really have nefarious activity, or is this just poor communication, a lack of understanding, a lack of clarity of who can fly, when they can fly, and really where they can fly? And it just your comment reminded me of that. Gosh, is it really that? Is it just poor communication and not nefarious actors, if you will?
Yeah, the poor communication part, I think, is definitely one of the hurdles. I think there is a low volume of bad actors out there that we have to be aware of, and it's that communication to get us to that finish line to say this one is compliant, this needs a little education, as well as what those bad actors. So that's a great point, Francis, on flagging that, because I do believe there is a lack of information sharing in a lot of those situations.
Yeah, maybe Michael, you can talk about how, as we go forward, how civilian and public safety folks can determine which drones are authorized and which drones are not under the new rules, and how our system can help identify those, or at least communicate that information to the stakeholders.
Well, I will start with the New Jersey is that, when they're talking about drones flying over the golf course.
Right.
Well, and before you fly app on the FAA website, it says you can fly there. It is the FAA, you're allowed to fly there, but there was so much news about, can't believe there's a drone flying over the president's golf course. And it's like, well, you're allowed to. And so that's even a miscommunication of where you can and can't fly. So at Airspace Link, our job is to help make sure we're educating the general public on how to fly correctly, whether it be through before you fly app, or LANC, low altitude authorization notification capability. Is there a temporary flight restriction? Is there a football game going on? And is the president coming into town? There's systems out there, and making sure people check those before they go and fly. That's number one. But when it comes to a city, the best thing there's one thing just to buy a drone detection system or radar, but you really need to get your house in order. I think that's the main thing. You might want package delivery within your city and all these things, but get your system in order. Make sure you have a platform that is managing your pilots. all your flight logs for auditing, and just so you're less scrutinized down the road. We even have the state of Texas even requires some cities to have a transparency website. All your drone flight, make sure unless it's like SWAT team, but they do have transparencies to build that community engagement. That's where I say get your home in order, because what we are seeing is sometimes that cross-jurisdictional. It could be their own drones within their own municipality, whether it's a code enforcement running a roof inspection or whatever that might be, and a public safety doing another operation. So
And Michael,
that's my
we
thing.
found that out with some of the opportunities we were pursuing together with Esri and Airspace Link, and we would go to a department and they'd say, "Oh, we have a drone program," and we'd say, "Well, ask yourself the question: Are you a department with drones? Because if you're public safety and public works and economic development, if you're just different departments with drones, that's not a drone program. That's different departments with drones, and you're just adding risk to the overall profile." So getting your house in order, understanding what you have as assets first, and then starting down the path of identifying and working to build out your virtual infrastructure is the next step. So I remember in the spring of last year, we had a drone meetup here in the Denver area. A lot of the attendees were like, "Oh yeah, I have a drone program," and we would say, "Yes, you have a department with drones. There's no before you fly. They weren't getting Lance authorization. There was nothing that they were doing. It was almost like a discovery session for them." So.
Yeah. There's questions in the inbox here, the webinar chat box that apply to this, and I'll sort of try to summarize some of them. But Michael, you mentioned transparency, and Matt, this is something everybody's aware of. There's a natural reluctance to allow new elements, new technologies in that people fear might be able to surveil or spy, or all the words you hear that I think are negative. And I wanted to talk a little bit about that. The way that, Matt, you can talk about this too, the way that police organizations are providing that transparency to their local communities, and ways that we can communicate to our stakeholders, our mayors and others who are sort of naturally leery. And George, you'll have something to say about this, of pushback that happens at city council levels often about transparency or about privacy. How are police organizations considering that as they start to expand drone programs, and how are cities addressing that, George, to communicate so that they can bring the innovative elements of drones at the same time assuaging the concerns people have about natural fears?
Yeah, I'll give you a short sort of answer, and then other folks can chime in. I think there's a pressure point. There's a line that mayors are at, that they're saying, listen, I'm either going to do something about critical issues, or I'm going to worry about the privacy sort of component, right? Because you're got to do this balancing act. I want, I have public safety, but I need more cameras. I don't want the cameras because who are they watching, right? So the idea is, at some point you have to say, I have to just fix the issue. And I know a lot of mayors, and I can't say that any one of them wouldn't agree that if we can save more lives, if we can do better, build a better place to live, that they wouldn't look into it and investigate it. The key at this point is just creating an opportunity or an offering that's easy for them to understand how to move into and how to use, and how to deploy, because it's fairly new in sort of its context, and how to layer this into the city. But everyone I talk to, I've never had anyone say it's a bad idea. I've always had them say, explain to me how I start to resolve some of these problems, and I'll deal with the constituents, because it actually starts, and the constituents want to see change. When you can show them change, you start to the noise starts to lessen. So it's resolving the problem first, and then working towards educating the community about what's being done about it. So that's where they're at now.
Copy that. Matt, if you could sort of talk about the transparency websites and other things that you're helping some of your police partners kind of set up in some cities.
Absolutely. We're very fortunate that in 2016, when a lot of these programs began, it was educating both leadership in these municipalities as well as the general public about the use cases of drones, and the life-changing value in drones. That benefit is so widely known now that thankfully it's less about that, and it's more focused on the transparency side and the volume of use, and has that's ramped up too. And so many of these public safety agencies have forward-facing dashboards where they're releasing flight data, they're releasing volume of calls for service in certain areas, because they know if they release that data and can show the constituents how exactly they're using the technology and for what purpose, it's going to continue to build that great community trust. August of every year is National Night Out for public safety, and I don't think there's many communities around the country anymore that don't have their drone teams at National Night Out to really build that trust and walk through how the technology is using, let the general public see firsthand what an operator can see and what they can't see, and both sides of that coin. So I give our agencies across the country a lot of credit for the work that they're doing to educate both their internal leadership, but then also the public stakeholders. But it's very important that we don't ramp that down, that we continue to do that as these programs scale, and show how we're going to continue to equitably share that airspace and work with public and private partners. It becomes even more valuable, those relationships and those initiatives as things move along.
Excellent. I want to also, we have just a quick time check. We've got about 10 minutes before we're going to take some questions from folks and a couple more topics that I wanted to cover before we get there. So FYI to all the people listening. And also, I want to talk a little bit about the Esri overlay. So Francis, we've been working with you for a long time. Michael, when he started putting together this system, our drone operations management system leveraged Esri's geospatial data as a backbone. But can you talk a little bit about the integration of Esri into the system and how people can leverage, and Michael, you can speak to this too, how people's relationship with Esri can benefit their use of say, Airspace Link's drone operations management program?
It's always exciting to talk about this first, right? And sorry, Michael, I cut right in front of you, but
Yeah, please do.
Michael has been a good friend to GIS, Geographic Information Systems, since early in his career. So when the team was really conceptualizing the idea of Airspace Link, they came to Esri and said, "Hey, you're the leaders in mapping and location intelligence, and everything we do has a sense of space and place. So we'd like to come together and join your startup program and start to develop this product together." So really, when I view the AirHub solution and ArcGIS, it really isn't overlaying as much as we are connected hip to hip. We have an integration with Airspace Link that really brings a return of investment in a local government's existing data, right? So all your parcel information, all your 3D as built, all of that information can readily be integrated into AirHub. In addition to that, early on in our journey together, we have a product called SiteScan. And SiteScan, we said, you know what? If we're going to go ahead and scan a 3D as built with a drone, we're going to put AirHub inside. So we deepened our integration and our story, not only hip to hip, but product to product. So if you're using any of our SiteScan capability for 3D as built, you're really starting to define some of that overhead infrastructure. So those integration points we uh, kind of visioned and kind of planned for and then made real in the product. So Michael and I have been close friends since those days. It's where I've been at Esri for 8 years. It feels like we've been friends for 10 for some reason, Michael, in this journey.
Yeah.
So I think that's what you thought when we had that inception of the organization.
Yeah, I just knew that 90 some percent of state and local governments have Esri technology. So if you can plug in and start to combine our federal system, and we keep them separate because of federal rules, and then you can combine your linear inspection or data on top for your operators, and you can push that data throughout your fleet or your operators. But also you can use for our system, drone operations management system. If you need to run a 3D model, that's a type of drone with a certain payload with a certain software. If it's drones as a first responder, it's another one. But the data sets can be connected that are relevant to that. If they're doing a linear inspection, well, you pull in the Esri or the city's linear inspection data that becomes the backdrop for the operators when they go out in the field. And that's if they're doing it within visual line of sight. As we get these drones in several cities now, we're getting BVLOS waivers or COAs or COWs that allow them to do more advanced operations. Now they're remotely flying these things, and now they're building digital twins, and now they're collecting more and more data, and we're just making it easy so that you can deploy drones. It will connect into these different software packages or hardware systems, and then do the job that you're requesting through like a workflow management system. And Esri just has a lot of data out there that customers already use. Might as well leverage their investment to enhance the experience of the operators.
Yeah, that's
Yeah. Esri is a great partner for you guys. Incredible technology and information. So you guys are off to a great start.
All right, we have time for probably one more sort of in-depth chat before we jump into the questions. And this one's it's for everyone, but I have a feeling that Michael and George, you'll probably hit this one up the most. And George, as you're talking to mayors and we're talking to mayors and we're talking to others folks in the city, there's a question that often happens, even those with drone programs or that are operating drones in their city currently, like what is the first things that I should be doing? People are questioning like how do I set this up? What sort of planning and organization should I be handling now? Where are the grants and how can I think about where those grants are and who's going to tell me where those grants are when they're here? Um, you can start this one off, George, but as we talked about earlier, there's usually like sort of a stepped approach to this. And can you tell me sort of like where mayors are in their heads they sort of want to start? Obviously, they would love, some big buzzy event that happens that gets lots of innovation media around, but there's more of a stepped approach that has to happen. And Michael, to you, I just want to talk about sort of that first 30 to 60 days leading up into the next are these new rules that are coming down, thinking about cross-department working groups and current capabilities assessments and thinking about federal grant prep. I want you to just kind of share for some of the people on the call after George kind of gives a little bit of info on this, like what should they be thinking about first? And George, we'll start with you. You've had those conversations. Where is their heads and the things that they think they need to start with?
Well, I'll kind of chop this up a little bit. So I think Francis said it earlier that a lot of cities have these independent sort of drone in the air for whatever reason. You might go to City X and the police department has a drone and they publicize it. And you might go to another city and they have a drone and they publicize it. And they haven't really understood exactly what the full offering does to change the way the city operates. It becomes a layer of the foundation opposed to a feature or a tool that is used occasionally. And I would say mayors are starting to understand that now. They still need awareness, guidance, and education. And I think a lot, not just mayors, but at the state level, at the local level, to really understand where that funding's at and how to get started. And I think the miscommunication, and I think we're starting to resolve that, is when we talk to the mayor directly and we explain that part of it and the areas we start to fix, the problems we start to resolve, there's an immediate understanding. Why? Because we're resolving a problem and we're defining how to sustain it. We're looking at how to actually make it sustainable. We're looking at actually making a change that is sustainable. There's the ability to actually create uh, uh, to expand and sort of replicate and build services. It's not just feature driven, it's outcome driven. So when we can really relay and have them understand, which they're looking for, you have to understand mayors are filled with a number of issues and priorities that they're resolving. And when you come in with an opportunity that supports long-term ways to resolve big problems, that's sustainable and potentially could self-fund or fund itself to some extent, whether it's with new services, that hasn't been well defined yet. So I would say we start at the top. And I think the awareness to mayors and other city leaders on what we're actually building, what we're actually delivering, and the change that we're actually committing to, we start to really see champions, just like we saw with other technologies in their early stages. And then we start to move it in as a foundational piece, opposed to a bell or whistle as we move forward. So I would say mayors are looking to resolve problems, but they need information to understand where to start and how to move it forward. They'll assign champions to it. And whether it's a CIO or a commissioner of this, the police department or somewhere else, it's fine. And maybe you start with them as the sort of champion of that agency or department. But someone at the top has to understand that this is a foundational change that's going to support long-term growth. And that's what we're doing, right? We're building the dialogue around that and the issues we're resolving. You got to have something tangible to fix. It can't be pie in the sky, nuts and bolts. We got to fix, we got to save a life. We got to really change the way someone lives. Otherwise, you're kind of spinning wheels because everyone is selling something. In this case, it's foundational, it's long-term, it's sustainable, and we're resolving real critical issues in real time for, moving forward. That is a story that they want to hear, and it's a story that they want to tell Why? Because it allows them to resolve problems and they can tell that story to the community. But that's what we have to do. We have to develop a narrative with an understanding on what they're changing and what they're resolving and allow them to move it forward. And I think that's where we start. I know that's where we start. So it's where we've been the most successful.
Yeah, and I'll just drop in. I know we're running out of time on this, but it drops to the next level. So once that vision is set, it's not a hobby drone. You need to think about this as a enterprise system, your IT network system you're about to deploy, a workflow management system. It's to serve your departments and serve your community, and that's where what do you need to think about over the next 2 months is you don't want to be at a standing start as this stuff really starts to ramp up. Get your ducks in a row, get and even policy. People are like, well, how is the city going to operate drones? Getting that, and how are we going to, comply with our own policies of how we're going to use drones for public safety or fire, and that is having a drone operations management system. Where everything's happening. You have system of record. You have reporting. You have conformance monitoring. You have UTM. You have detect and avoid. You have all the systems, but they're being thought of as a enterprise network, not I'm just going to throw a drone detection system over here and it's going to be siloed. Well, that system can be deployed citywide and also support other departments and then the public and economic development. So start small. It's about just getting your house in order. I think that's how I went. Get your house in order to be able to then know where to go.
Yeah. And I should point out that a big part of the role we play now with some of our city partners and clients is to help them walk through this. I mean, this isn't something where you buy our software and then you're like, good luck out there. I mean, right now we're all in an educational moment for this industry. Everybody we work with needs to understand what the next steps they should take are and to sort of be guided through that process. So everything that we're doing right now is about guiding people through that initial process, showing people where the pots of money will be, alerting them when it's time to think about the next element, guiding their program from one phase step to another. I think that's just going to be the way that it is for the next couple of years, at least, until people start to understand and start to see other examples that they can emulate as they go forward. And that's just a part of our job at Airspace Link. I do want to move it over to questions right now, and some of these are going to get more technical. And so for anybody that wants to answer, you can either just turn off your microphone and I'll be looking for that, or you can just kind of step up. The first one comes from, and I'm not sure, this might have been from Andre, I'm not sure, but it says, I'm curious how your technology works specifically when it comes to drone detection. Does your system detect the actual RF signals in the drones, thereby having a library, quote unquote, of drone signals of the different manufacturers? And does it do actual radar camera detection of something in the air, which would be needed if there was no RF controller in the equation? That would be like sort of either a bad actor or somebody using a drone that doesn't have RF detection.
I'll take that one. So we do have deployments and throughout the entire United States, from the Department of Defense, Joint Base Charleston, you can see, to City of Detroit. Each location and use case has separate types of sensors. So Airspace Link has, I'd say, 8 to 10 different sensor companies, depending on what they're looking for. Some cities deploy a simple remote ID. So that's remote ID detection. Some say we want remote ID and RF detection. Some depending on the agency, I don't want to say wiretapping, but it's like has some pretty advanced technology. And then you get into what you said, optical. And it's a Swiss cheese approach or a layered security approach. It's how many layers do you need based on the risk that is at hand? Is it a marathon, or is it the president's coming into town? So to answer your question you can look on our website. It's all the top sensor companies are already embedded in our platform, and you can't even tell which one you're in. But everything you said is part of that, almost with each sensor company. The data just might be slightly different. We have sensor fusion partners as well, and there's radar. We have radar companies, and again, they're on our website of those partners. And you plug and play what you think you need as a city or an organization or at what event.
Yeah. The next question is, this is something where we're seeing happen, commercial delivery companies starting to move into cities now, often without a lot of coordination with those cities, I might add. And so there's questions about, the question that we have here is, what are the prospects for a comprehensive UTM system? I'm going to give this one to you, Michael, because it's one you should be able to knock out of the park. What are the prospects for a comprehensive UTM system to deconflict commercial delivery versus DFR, et cetera?
Yeah. Well, so we just Airspace Link just went through the US UTM onboarding process. That's strategic deconfliction. It was started down in the key site in Texas, kicked off by Google Wing, Zipline, Public Safety, a few others. We went through that onboarding process as well. We are not vertically integrated, meaning those companies fly drones. We are we have the ability now to onboard a public safety agency. Someone said equitable access. We create an equitable access to the airspace by them not having to spend millions of dollars on their UTM and detect and avoid system and going through auditing that we have to go through and ISO compliant, SOC 2 compliant. All of that is taken care of. And so that is out there. So it is a strategic deconfliction network. It's a federated system that we are running live right now. So when a flight takes off or is set to fly, it creates a volume intent, where they're going to intend, at what altitude. It checks to see if Amazon is flying in the same airspace at the same time, and it gives you the ability to change the time or the altitude. Drones is a first responder. There is the NPRM. It's up for public comment. That is public safety is set to #1. Is it enacted yet? No. But it is set to, so that they would have priority with their strategic deconfliction as they launch a drone. Now, for public safety, you're going to streamline that process. You don't want to draw a polygon and say, I'm going to fly here. We just, when the call comes in, the route's created, the volume is created, and then it goes through the submitting. And then if there's a conflict, that will be deconflicted.
Nice. The last question is before we shut down for the afternoon is that, Matt, talking about UTMs for public safety, the need as these delivery companies come in to have your own UTM so that you can coexist with these delivery companies that are choosing their cities right now.
100% needed across the board. And it's imperative that we lean into these types of discussions on the public safety side, because in long term, as we continue to build out the volume of traffic in the airspace, we have to have a UTM in place to work with these other organizations. Now, many agencies fly under Part 91 as it exists today. It means that the agency has their own waivers internally. It's not pilot by pilot on that capacity. And we're given some more latitude under Part 91, even over some of those commercial operations. But as public safety organizations, we need to be a good, equitable player in that space and work with our private partners to put these systems in place to make sure that they're robust and to make sure that our operations are safe and secure and that we're not going to have an unattended crash with a potential other aircraft or drone in the sky. And so while we do have the permissions already to do some of these things, it's just really imperative that we lean into the UTM focus with both the public and the private side to make sure that everyone's on the same playing field.
Excellent.
Yeah, and just to give an example, we do have a location right now that has 4 or 5 drone companies flying BVLOS in the same area at the same time. Linear inspection, building inspection, drones as a first responder, parts delivery. I'm probably missing another one, but there's several out there, but they are working in they're working within a UTM within a closed system, and now they're onboarding into the national UTM, and you're right, it's getting very busy in that area, and then and there's a tool out there that's being used right now. I think there are about 2,000 flights per day in that system now. That was started out of Texas. So it is increasing and will be growing very rapidly.
Well, excellent. We're going to have to let that be the last word, but I want to tell everybody who's still on the call with us right now is that all these questions that we have, we're happy to answer them all. We'd love for you to reach out to us directly, or we're going to send more information to you. And if we didn't get your question today, we can answer separately, and appreciate your involvement in this. And we hope to talk to you more about the drone programs that you're building in your cities. With thanks to all the panelists today, thank you all for joining us, and thanks for everyone for making time for this webinar today as well. Appreciate your time.
Absolutely. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Appreciate it.